Hello, people. Okay, there's a heat wave going, so I hope the fan above my head isn't bugging anyone. This week, messing with my notes. This week, I read Planet of the Apes. Now, why did I get this book? Obviously, same reason I watched the movie. It's talking monkeys. It's not that complicated, right? I did not know this was a book. I think it was a book first. This isn't a novelization of the movie. Some dude wrote a book. And then, of course, they used that book to make the movie. So, I didn't know what to expect. What I got was very good. Very, very good. I almost want to give it a 5 out of 5. But I'm not. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. It is a very good book. It's much more intellectual than I was prepared for. Uses big words, big meaty words, and I think you need to because you're talking about monkeys, right? To balance it, to balance your subject out with the concept you want to get across, he needed the heftier words. So it's a fun, chewy read, so to speak. This is weirdly this is gonna sound weird, but if you have a woke friend, they will probably like this book. Our author will make a few really great commentaries that I think woke people will enjoy, but in not such a way that will turn off people who are tired of hearing woke stuff. You'll see what I mean when I get to it. Okay. We start with Jin and Phyllis. Literally, space tourists. They're frolicking in space in a sort of a luxury yacht type situation that they have. This is said is not usual, right? This isn't a weekend trip. They're a bit higher, wealthier than normal people, and then they can do this. So yachting, that's the kind of vibe you get. And he even says they're sailing through space. And we get into some fun science fiction of, like a literal sail grabbing ions or sun rays or however you want to go. It's fun, right? It's a great setting. In their travels, they see an object in space. It turns out to be a literal message in a bottle. We crack this message open and start reading, and what they read are two frolickers in space. Ends up being our story, our Planet of the Apes story. So I'm like, we may be stretching a little to say message in a bottle, like a manuscript in a bottle. I guess it could fit in. It does say it's written small, but we'll take it, right? We only need a reason. So everything now is written as by one person. We start now our message in a bottle. This is our story in a story, so to speak. It's a man named Elias, a scientist, I forget the scientist's name, and a man named Arthur Levant, who is the scientist's assistant. 3 men are going on a deep space journey to Beetlejuice. I know, I laughed probably like y'all are laughing. Could not get this image out of my head of this goofy movie, but it was written before that movie was out. I don't know why he picked this name. Maybe it's the actual name of a planet when he researched it. I'm not sure. He doesn't keep calling it this. He gives it like a side name. What's the side name? C-roll. C-roll. Something to this effect. He gives it a side name, but for the most part, he calls it Beetlejuice, and it kind of throws you. But there's nothing you can do or he can do, right? He wrote it before the Goofy movie came out. He had no idea Michael Keaton was going to be a great actor. Okay? In any case, they're going to C-roll. It's, I don't know, thousands of light years away or whatever, but our scientist has a way to get there faster. It's a 2-year journey essentially. So 1 year up to speed, 1 year slowing down, boom, you're at this new planet. But the kicker is obviously your time dilation. So the faster, in their idea, the faster you move to the speed of light, the slower time moves outside of it. And so essentially, he will be able to go and come back, and I don't know, 700 years, 800 years have passed on Earth. And for him as a young journalist without a family, he thinks this is a great opportunity. 1, to see a new planet. 1, to space travel. But 2, to have this interesting story. He'll be a man from the past. The eyes of the past, how they see the future, now that you're living in it, etc., etc. He thought it'd be interesting, and he's going to give it a go. Our scientist is over people. He's done with them. He doesn't like them, and he wants to go someplace where they aren't and start fresh or see new things. This is his reason for the voyage. I'm like, I think you'd be able to find a healthy number of people today, probably more than in the 60s, who are over people and would just take their dog and their pets and go to a new planet if they could. You'd find more than a handful, I would think, which is kind of funny to think about. They get to Beetlejuice, and they're, right, it's the ye old big ship and sort of a little shuttlecraft. It's going to take them down to the planet's surface, and in its pre-programmed landing, flies over what they clearly see as a town. They see a town, buildings, roads, the whole layout. There's nature around it that's been cleared away. So they now know it goes from just interesting enough to be on a barren rock. More interesting, it's a habitable planet. Thrice interesting is that it's inhabited actually, not just habitable. So they're not exactly sure what they're going to see. I think him, the journalist, and Levant have guns, carbines. The scientist doesn't want to bother with them. And I think they sort of land in a lake or something to this effect. I think it's a lake. They get out, go to shore, start walking around, don't see anybody, don't see anything. See odd plants, see odd animals. The fun stuff for space travel, right? At some point, they see a foot in the ground. It's a human foot. It's a lady foot. They follow it. They get to a small pond, right? A little oasis. And they see who they end up calling Nova. Well, at least our Elias calls her Nova. She doesn't have, they never say her name other than he says it. And she's completely naked and dreamily beautiful, right? Like ethereal. Just the ideal of what they'd want to see. Make statues out of her, etc., etc. And here's, I'm like, a bit of a stretch, right? Because the attractive aesthetic changes, right? So the Vikings, what the Vikings saw as attractive in a woman or a man is going to be way different than what Norwegians see as attractive nowadays. Because it was 3,000 years ago and you have different problems. So for a Viking, a 6-foot tall lady who's strong and can fight off wolves might be more attractive than like a rail thin model who only eats fruit. You see, typically your primitive type people, shorter, darker, hardier, right? They're stronger, more robust because they're living in a jungle or up in the mountains or whatever. That's how they tend. You see when they show Indians from Peru or something like that. They're short, dark, squat type people. So the fact that he went with super hot is kind of funny to me. Obviously, it's going to play a part later in the story. We just go with it. Because I know, I'm like, again, the benefit of this title. I as the reader, don't stop at them meeting people on this planet. Because I got a book called Planet of the Apes. The action is yet to come. Even if you don't know the movie, even if you've never read the book, you know the action's coming. If it doesn't, we're all disappointed and we throw it down a shaft because it's trash. But we know the action, the real action we want's coming. And that's the monkeys. She's uncommunicative in any kind of way that they can get. She's almost like an animal in how she reacts, baring her teeth. So they're thrown, right? Here's a pretty lady, can't even talk to her. When they got to the planet, they let a monkey out, a monkey that they brought with them, to see if it was safe. He scampers off. Well, he finds them in this pond, and this lady murders Hector the chimp. Poor Hector did nothing wrong, and she just murks him, which they're thrown by, obviously. But they're still trying to communicate. Poor Hector. At some point, more dudes show up. Same as her. They're Adonises. Tall, strong, chiseled, good-looking guys. Muscular. Zero clothes on. And they're primitive as her. They don't communicate. They almost freak out when they hear voices, so they don't talk. Our scientist, our group, doesn't talk. Everyone just ends up playing in the water until a noise is heard, and all the dudes, including Nova, freak the crap out. Right? Well, no, too soon. Our Elias gets tired of this and tries to up it, right? He's like, I didn't come halfway across the galaxy to play in the water like a child. So he says something and then bows and they freak out, right? And here's where that character background is so effective. And it carries through the rest of our book. Elias is not a scientist, right? So when him and the assistant want to jump in the water, I'm sitting here like, bro, there could be flesh eating anything in there. It could look like water and be a pool of acid for all you know. You don't just jump in the water on a foreign planet. It's silly. You don't just they look like people, so I'll just talk to them. I'm like, we're on a foreign planet. They're not humans, so I can't interact with them normally. But him being a journalist, grown, he's going to react to things. What is it? He's a journalist, he's grown, and he's French. He has a temperament, and he has no real reason to cap that temperament. He isn't a scientist. If I think of things more scientifically, because I've watched a bunch of sci-fi shows, that's on me. But that's not on him. And so his interactions then make sense and help move the plot along, right? So I really like that everything lines up really well and moves us forward in a consistent way. So they try to talk to these primitive dudes. These primitive dudes freak the crap out. Our boys pull out their carbines and everyone backs off. So we're just like, you know what, let's just go back to the ship. Let's leave. Let's reassess. On their way back, these dudes attack them. But they don't try and kill them. They just rip their clothes off, take their guns and break them, and then take their ship and smash it. Like monkeys, right? And so we're stranded now. What the crap do we do now? Before they could get on that, the guys freak out again, our primitives, and yeet it out of there. And it was with such energy that our travelers get caught up in it as well. So that it's if the rats are fleeing, you better leave too, because the locals know, right? So whatever it is they're running from, they don't want to be a part of, and they just run with them. Lose the old guy because he's too slow. And at some point he gets his wits about him, and they stop by a fallen log, right? They're just trying to scope out the situation. I think they hear gunfire. Clearly they're involved in a hunt. He looks up and he sees, boom, a monkey on horseback. And it's enough to, stop him in his tracks. It would me too. It stops him in his tracks. But it's not just, and this is the fun part of the writing. He does this more than once, where you could be in a room with people and not a word spoken, and you just get a sense like, that guy's not right. He keeps staring at me, and I think he wants to eat my face, right? Not a good situation. And then actions happen, right? When you go to court, you can use that. The jury understands that you have this perception about intentions, about intelligence, just in unspoken communication. And that's what he sees with this monkey. He's not just a monkey on horseback, right? Not just a man-shaped gorilla on horseback, but that he's clothed, that he's clearly sitting watching this hunt, waiting in a preordained spot, that he's aware that the humans are going to run a certain way, right? And so our boy and his friends stop. The people just roll on through, and this monkey with his, assistant just starts winging dudes just with his gun. He starts killing people. Our Levant freaks out, gets shot in this melee, in this to-do. So he's out. Dudes are dying. So our guy, our Elias, is caught between these two, sort of a horror and the shock of it all. Because on the one hand, you're seeing dudes getting shot, and that's tragic and impactful. But on the other hand, it's monkeys shooting them. And so it short circuits him, right? It takes him a second to just, what am I going to do? He gets his wits, waits for a reload, bolts it through to a safe spot. At least he thinks it's safe. Of course, he ends up captured. Before he can try and talk, right? I think he tries to talk and they butt him with a gun or something. He comes to in a cage with other people. And outside, it's human bodies, right? They've been shot up. And it's a crowd of monkeys. They keep calling them monkeys. They'll be gorillas, chimpanzees, or orangutans, but man-shaped now. But it's just instead of saying humans, he says monkeys. And it's the scene, again, here's your first woke commentary. The scene he describes is your classic hunting scene, right? Think back to the 1800s, and we're happy we killed 56 sharks or something because we think they're endless. We didn't. It's not an era that's grown up with endangered species, things like this. So they kill 56 sharks. They just line them up, and the town comes out. The kids get to poke them, and the ladies, wipe away some of the blood, make it more presentable. And the guys stand with their guns and are like, "Look at my kill!" Right? He makes that full description, but with the horror of its human bodies on the ground, and with the idea that all the hunters are monkeys, right? So now the point isn't too hard to get to, where this commentary is calling hunters monkeys for the waste, for the uselessness of it. They're not eating these things, that they're trophies, etc., etc., etc. Now, if you're a hunter, you're going to fight back the way you want to fight back, blah, blah, blah. You've been in those fights before. But to me, that the point of that it's hidden, this is what makes it such good writing. That you want to make this point, and if you don't want to hear it, you just don't listen, and you're just following a guy on an alien planet with monkeys as hunters. And that's interesting. But if you're wanting to make that point, you'll clearly see it and enjoy it, right? It's this twofold commentary. But then in the middle, right? So you're like, well, I want to make this point, but I don't, I'm a hunter, let's say, and I'm mad that he's making this point. He doesn't just overbear on one angle. Because our guy's in a cage with other humans and some kid humans, And they're tossing them fruit. The monkeys are tossing in fruit. Of course, you're watching them attack each other for the fruit, and it's fun. But at one point, a kid goes for the fruit, and a grown man, again, they're all primitive, knocks the kid out of the way to eat the fruit. The monkey, or chimpanzee, gorilla, whatever, sees this, gives them the old what for with a pike. I think the butt of the pike. You know, we're not talking about people getting stabbed here. Knocks the guy away, then calmly hands the girl another piece of fruit. And, you know, make sure she's able to eat it. And again, if you're just stuck on your woke angle of all hunters are horrible monkeys that just kill for fun, you missed this point. But the point in that here the hunter, who's a monkey, has compassion and isn't just wantonly killing everything. That there are degrees to them. And this is what you find later, is that the ones kept alive are for scientific purposes. The hunt's supposed to be for science, but some of them get carried away. And of course society sees it as no great loss because they're animals. The humans are animals. Which again is another commentary, I guess, on people. Sometimes we're animals. But that it was for science, for the promotion of society, and that they treated them as humanely as they could from their perspective, right? That hunters can be that too. That there are degrees within every group, shades of gray, that you should see probably. Just a fantastic commentary. Our boy Elias gets stuck in a special cage. He's in a facility, clearly. And he tries to talk. He talks. And the guards just laugh. They're like, what is this? Again, the equivalent of if a monkey started talking. You wouldn't think now the monkey is... Well, not everyone would. At least these meathead guards don't think that. They're just like, it's a dude that talks. How goofy is that? I don't know. Some other monkey must have taught him how to talk. They don't care, right? It doesn't faze them, really. And he's let down a little. But then, the next day, I think, a female chimpanzee comes in, clearly of a higher rank than our guards. Again, you pick up a lot of this on perception. How they treat her when she walks in, how she can treat them, you know, brush her hand away and they'll stop laughing or whatever. So he sees that she's clearly higher up, a scientist. I think he ends up finding out her name is Zara. It's a cool monkey name. He tries to talk to her, and he can see in her eyes that the light is on, right? That she's seeing more than the normal ones are seeing. But it can't get them anywhere yet. The next day, we come with a bunch of Pavlov's tests. This is, you know, like you ring a bell and then you get sugar. You hit a gong or a light and then the cage electrifies. This sort of action-reaction test they do. The classic your dog salivating tests are all in there. And of course he knows them because he's an adult. And he doesn't act accordingly. Or he's trying to, in any way he can, show that he's intelligent. Which is sort of working until the big boss comes. Big boss being an orangutan. And the orangutan is clearly pompous. He's full of himself. He's not seeing what's in front of him. And this, again, is your second commentary. I mean, our author is literally calling the scientific establishment orangutans. And if you look through your history, the easiest one to find is Faraday, Michael Faraday. If you look him up, Michael Faraday is a straight genius, pure genius. When a guy has to fix a electrical line, the big huge ones that can vaporize you, of course he wears no jewelry, and you have a chain suit you put on, and then they get this long pole and they connect to the electricity. The electricity then goes from the line around them, into the line, and back on down the way, right? And they're completely unhurt. This is real life now. That is called the Faraday effect. This is how influential the things Michael Faraday learned about electricity back in ye olden time, 1700s or whenever he did it, right? He was a genius. Well, in his time, he showed up with an idea. And the establishment, rather than be excited about this new thing we're learning, shut him down. They asked some dumb questions, but the point that he saw, and for him it was his mentors were his friends. So he didn't want to really mush their faces in it. He didn't want to embarrass them. But what he saw was it is not going to change, that his ideas aren't what they want. What they want is to be in the king's court, to be high in society, to be seen as dignified intellectuals. And to do that, they have to present ideas. And once those ideas are presented, then it's in their interest to not have those ideas challenged in any way. And so when Michael Faraday shows up with new, better ideas, they supplant it, they ignore it, they look down on it. And what he does is he leaves. He's like, fine. And he goes to work on all the ideas he can think of. Then he tests every way they might ask about it. And then, ask again the answers, that they would have thought that he found, etc., etc. I mean, he just goes through it, up and down, left and right, inside and out, I think for about 30-something years. Till his friends, his older establishment friends, die. And he comes back with a big fat book, plops it on the table, and, basically says, go after yourself. Any question you have is already answered. The new things that come up will generate questions. I've answered those questions too, etc., etc. There was nothing anyone could say. It was overwhelming. But the fact remains that here, the scientific establishment hampered science for 30-something years. Because if Michael Faraday had just been let loose, we could have had... We could have been 30 years ahead of where we were because everyone had to wait for these idiots. This is what this is the commentary our guy makes over and over in this book with these orangutans. How here's a man who can speak, who's intelligent. And in every instance, this orangutan, what's his name? Zaius, I believe is his name. Love the Z names. Z's not used enough. Zaius, at every opportunity, finds a way to make a goofy excuse for why what they're seeing isn't what you're seeing. I mean, this is what he's almost actively trying to do because he's so pompous and full of himself. And it's just such a great commentary, especially if you look at the history of science. It shouldn't be this hard. It should just be a spot, if anywhere, where right and truth and evidence win out. But it just consistently isn't. I love this one. I really do. We eventually get to what science gets to. And that is your mating rituals. Now, our boy doesn't go into these descriptions. He gets paired with Nova. And then this is where I think it dawns on me that her attractiveness is essential to the story, even if it's not as realistic as we would want it to be, right? Because they're trying to make them do their mating ritual. The other cages do easily. That's not a problem. We don't get massive descriptions, so you don't have to worry. It's very, I'd almost say rated G. There's nothing really described at all. So if that's an issue for you, don't worry about it. When we get to him and Nova, he's like, I'm a civilized man. I'm not just going to do, what is it? I'm not doing the horizontal hula in front of a bunch of apes because I know they're thinking creatures. And, he goes like, you know what? I'm just not. We're not getting into this. Well, I think, what is it? Zaius. Our head monkeys don't like this. And eventually they're like, he must be weird. So we're just going to move her to another cage. And that sort of sets our boy Elias off, right? Like, I've known her longer. We have kind of a relationship. And he acts like a monkey. He acts like a primitive ape to get them to bring her back. And then he does the deed. I guess with gritted teeth. As painful as that must have been for him, right? But then it's like, if we'd have made her unattractive to him, then this part of the story doesn't work. And then that affects later. So, I'm going to let it slide, I guess. Even if it doesn't make an accurate sense, we can just go, it's an alien planet. Let's just let it be a little bit. In any case, that's the reason why she has to be supermodel hot. He eventually gets a hold of Zara's notebook and then has an idea he says he should have had a lot sooner. And that is, he gets her notebook and writes down the Pythagorean theorem, your old triangle rigmarole. And, it clicks instantly for her. And this is your idea amongst scientists, is that of everything, language-wise, it's too heavy in the relationships, right? So, if I show this to y'all, no country is going to not know that this is a pen, that we write in things with it. But that's our historical culture, and that an alien planet might have never started writing in this sense. A good example was, I think the Inca or the Maya, they had a system of ropes and knots, which was their written language. The rope, the knot, the color of the rope, the size of the knot, the proximity of the knots was some kind of a language. Of course, we've lost it because when the conquistadors showed up, they're like, what is this mop? And they chucked it aside. So, we basically lost libraries worth of Mayan information because these goobers didn't know what it was. It's reality. But that's an example of how varied the communication could be with an alien species. So it does no good to use words or different words or letters, because to them those are just shapes. What does the shape mean? So in the scientific thinking is that if you use math, that math somehow is universal. I don't think it's any more universal than the written language, right? I would go pictures maybe over anything. But I think NASA put some golden disc on the Voyager probe with some math equations and some music and this and that. It's like a vinyl. It's like a golden vinyl disc. Floating out in space right now. But that math is, sort of what they're leaning on, if anything. That's what they're leaning on to get some start of communication across with aliens we find. And that's what we pick in this book. You can sort of tell our author is big into the theories of his time and working them into a story really well. I really like it. It's what science fiction should do. We get a fun breakdown of their society. Again, he calls them all monkeys, but they are actually 3 branches. It's your gorillas, your chimpanzees, and your orangutans. Your orangutans are sort of the smartest book-wise, right? So they have the best memory. They'll memorize things people say, write those things sort of down in new books, and then other orangutans, pat them on the back. We're still really harping on these scientific researchers. Your gorillas were obviously historically the strongest, and so they're used to sort of ruling, but we don't have wars anymore. Everyone just sort of has their role. So their role is sort of enforcement and production. So if you think of a new way to make light bulbs, they would have the gumption to not understand what that means, but to drive it into industry. So I think your best example, what I'm thinking of is your titans of industry. So like your Rockefellers. Your Rockefeller was hanging out with Tesla, interested in Tesla's idea of like fluorescent lights and whatnot, because Tesla was really smart. But then at some point, some other guy made a radio, and so Rockefeller, was it Rockefeller? J.P. Morgan. It was J.P. Morgan. My bad. It was J.P. Morgan who was like, he sort of dropped Tesla because he's like, well, we have radio now. And Tesla's like, I was going to give you the, Wi-Fi, essentially. But, whatever. So you get that sense that these titans of industry, that's these gorillas, because that's strength and industry. It goes over that way. And your chimpanzees are sort of in the middle, but they're the most forward-thinking. They're the ones who can think out of the box the most and think of new things that then these other groups use to their advantage. And that's society. They have a triumvirate. This is one of each ruling. Beneath them would be a senate made up of 3 parts, one of each looking out for their sort of side's interest. I look out for apes, I look out for chimps, I look out for orangutans, and we all sort of agree on broader society things, right? Like, so roads are helpful, sanitation's helpful, right? And I feel like this is a subtle commentary on government, and that the animal kingdom governs itself a lot more efficiently than human governments do, right? That we make messes, that we let, I guess, people reach beyond their talents and make a hash of things, so to speak. It's a subtle commentary, but I think it's there. He says they've stopped their racial wars. There aren't real barriers. That any chimp can do whatever job he wants. That any gorilla can do whatever job he wants. But then these culture things level the waters out, so to speak. I think it's just fun to talk about monkey society, so I like this bit. We get to, this is just a fun side note, he's asking, because he can now communicate well enough, he starts to ask, why are monkeys dominant on this planet and not man? And the lady's like, monkeys were always dominant, but it's obvious. She says, and it's their common idea, is that they have 4 feet. And so they can be, they have more tools at their disposal. That the monkey foot can grab and that the hand can grab. And so, they have more options than humans with only their 2 hands and feet. Which is kind of funny to me. And again, maybe a subtle dig at evolution. Because we're now talking about why is it gorillas aren't the dominant species when they're bigger and stronger, have the same almost makeup we do? Or why don't we look like sort of gorillas? Why wasn't there that interaction? Why is it, because we say, the same as them. They look at their feet and go, well, we have more tools. We look at our hands and say, we have opposable thumbs. Like, that's supposed to win out over a monkey? Is this action? It's just sort of funny. Now, obviously, if you're very religious and you believe in creation, this might offend you or make you laugh in that, again, the scientist is just a monkey who's grasping at straws as to why things are the way they are. Doesn't go too much into the religious element. It doesn't go too much into the evolution element, other than he's just trying to piece things together. Take that how you want. I'm not too worried about it. Up until this time, and probably a little further on in the book, he gets a chance to where he can go out and about, right? She's gotten clearance to move this man around in town, which is unusual. Same as, I have a pet chimpanzee, kind of walk around New York. Yes, but you're not going to see many of those. He still has no clothes on, right? Which is awkward for him, but apparently it's not awkward for town because they're just used to seeing humans naked. If anything, it's more weird that he's in town rather than he's naked. But it's just you almost forget, but he reminds you ever so often. I'm like, yeah, I'm still without any clothes, and I'd like pants. And she's like, I can't give you pants. You'd be a laughing stock. Which is just funny. We didn't meet her, what was her name? Zaya? we meet her fiance, another chimpanzee named Cornelius. Great name for a monkey, not gonna lie. Our Cornelius is much more practical, right? And so what he's aware of is talking man upsets the societal balance. But he's also scientific, so he can't just leave an intelligent man in a cage. Right? So they come up with a plan. The plan being a massive speech at a highly publicized scientific forum. And that he's like, once you show everyone there's enough internal division that you'll have to be, sort of christened, proclaimed an intelligent being, and then you can sort of have more autonomy. That'll be the best way. Otherwise, your orangutans can, brush you under the rug, and that wouldn't be good for anybody. This works magically, and he gives this long speech, passes out from the stress, and when he wakes up, boom, everything's good. They put pants on him, he's allowed into society, and he just gets swept along. We go into this bit about genetic memories, which again is a fun scientific theory in that, right, you'll see some babies or some animals have instincts that weren't taught. And so they assume that somehow the memory of, that's poisonous or sharp teeth or bad is embedded somewhere in the memory, the genetic memory of animals. And if you take that concept further, you get fun things. Dune with Muad'Dib. That leans heavily on genetic memory. But our guy uses it to illuminate sort of the past. Does he go a little overboard? They're having full-on second lives kind of situation where it's maybe too clear, so to speak, right? I can just turn on a radio. I found a recording of somebody living their life thousands of years ago before the monkeys took over the planet, right? And they're just giving an account of the monkeys are servants and now they won't listen. We talk about how humans got lazy and let the monkeys do all the work. Kind of sort of your basic setup to most robot uprisings in sci-fi, but with monkeys. It's not bad. It works. When he gives this speech, I missed a part, but he in a speech, and he does this multiple times in talking to people being other monkeys, where he brings up constantly how monkeys are treated on Earth. Now, personally, I might have skipped this, right? So if I'm on an alien planet with monkeys, I'm going to just lie. I'm going to just lie and tell them we don't have any monkeys on our planet. I don't know how science works, but we don't have any monkeys. Do you test on animals? I'm like, well, we test on dogs. I'd never test on a monkey if we had them because they're clearly intelligent, right? You play along a little bit. This guy doesn't. He goes right into telling them how monkeys are treated on Earth. And I'm like, bro, you're not making any friends like that. I wouldn't have done it. He does it a lot. He does it in his speech. He does it in, one-on-ones, etc., etc. He's a full-on accepted intelligent being. They end up inviting him on a dig site. Just because Cornelius likes to hang out with him. He knows he's smart. Maybe give some insight. And they're digging up old ruins. And in the ruins, they find a doll. And the doll speaks and it says, Papa. Right? Now, for the orangutans, they're like, this means nothing. It's just a doll. But for our other two, we're like, it's proof that humans could talk in the past, and it messes up the whole order of how the monkey world wants to be, how they want to perceive themselves, etc. But to me, I get a good commentary here on archaeology itself. Most of them aren't this bad, but you hear a lot of, if you find something, don't mess with it, let an archaeologist show up. I'm like, bro, I can dig up a Roman ruin and not ruin it, right? What they want is the credit, right? Ooh, I'm the archaeologist who found this. He's just, the farmer who owned the land. F that guy. Look, talk to me. I'm the expert, right? We find this in a lot. The worst case of this is in Egypt. I forget this guy's name. He's been like the head of archaeology in Egypt for years. And he mandates some Egyptian archaeologists to be with you at all times. But in a lot of cases, because there's more stuff to be found in Egypt than he has experts to lend, he seals off. He seals off tons of sites. So we know stuff is there, but no one's allowed in because this goober orangutan archaeologist won't let anyone in to look at it. Even other archaeologists, he won't let them in. It's like locked. I'm like, this is an absolute travesty. I should be able to know more about the Egyptians than I know, but this muppet, this monkey, won't let anyone in. So to me, it's another commentary. The last commentary is on the financial sector. Again, your woke friends will like this. They take them to essentially a stock exchange. Only, you've seen the stock exchange? And it's this big, tall, well, if you make it a little taller and dangle stuff, then fill the space completely from top to bottom with monkeys, with gorillas, with orangutans, with chimpanzees, all hooting and hollering and yelling and flying around from spot to spot, because they're still orangutans. They grab stuff, they're swinging around to make deals. And he describes it as just being completely overwhelming, just the cascade of noise, the barrage of it. He feels like some are just down there yelling to yell, and that it's just a complete and utter madhouse. And I'm like, if that's not a commentary on your stock exchange, at least how some people perceive it, as this mad, gluttonous, greedy house that serves no real purpose, etc. All the woke things people say. But there it is, described as monkeys swinging around, not caring about anything in the world. They don't care that he's a talking man. They don't care about new discoveries. Only, the almighty dollar. Great commentary. We end, again, the real point, the real crux of Nova being hot is that she got pregnant. And that now the entire establishment, the entire government, top to bottom, is concerned about, will this kid be able to talk or not? And does this spark a new race of intelligent man that would compete with monkeys, etc., etc.? Whole apple cart's about to get upended. And even Cornelius sees it. And as much as he's scientific, he just, like our lady monkey would be more for the cause than even her husband. Her husband's like, what, I'm about to get married. I'd like to have a decent career and raise some kids of my own. I don't need this revolution. Sort of how he sees. So he conspires to get Nova and our boy, what do I call him? How do I keep forgetting his name? Elias, onto a test shuttle, so that then he can pilot said shuttle over to his shuttle that's been in space this whole time, and he and Nova and their baby can leave, which he's fine with and they're fine with. This is what he does. I might have personally asked the monkeys to come with me so I can introduce them to Earth, but that's a separate story. He doesn't. They get back on and they say goodbye to Beetlejuice, and they ramp up the 2 year, the 1 year up and the 1 year down, make it back to Earth. And it's been 800 years. He lands to no great fanfare. Nova, who can now, sort of talking a little, at least more aware, I think. Still primitive, but he's able to, he's been teaching her. It's been 2 years. They come down with their kid and they're in, Earth. She freaks the crap out. Then he turns and sees what she's freaking out about. And the cop who's investigating, like, what's going on here, is a monkey. Right? And that's sort of the horror of Earth now full of monkeys is hitting him. And that's how our story ends. And we go back to Message in the Bottle. And the two think this is ridiculous. And they're like, yeah, the author went a little overboard with that one. And then turns out they're monkeys too. Plot twist, they were monkeys all along. monkeys everywhere. And that's how our story ends. It's really a great story. Very intellectual in its presentation. Very, very fun. I don't know if I don't know if he wrote a sequel, but this is why there's like 19 Planet of the Apes movies and it never gets old. Because it's just the idea of a monkey cop is fun, monkey scientist. The idea is fun, but then the commentaries it can make is also fun. Because you want to poke at these pompous fools sometimes. It's just fun all around. It's short. Go give it a read. And now it's time for ads. Are my books as good as Talking Monkeys? I don't know that any book is. Right? It's like the Flintstones. It's a premise that just does not get old. But here are my books. You can go buy them to help the channel, and then you'll own a book. You can also get Kindle Unlimited and read them on there. It works like, I guess, Spotify for books. Go check them out. I will talk to you all later.